Everybody. I'm Catherine Warren. I'm the new Chief Executive Officer of the Vancouver Economic Commission. My academic background is in physics and journalism. My career has been in international business development in Canada, the US, the UK, and Europe, and particularly in the area of entertainment technology. Early successes, one was contributing to developing British Columbia's first elementary science curriculum, and then later with a couple of partners taking a software company public on the NASDAQ exchange and growing that to a significant market cap. I represent Canada on the Emmy nominating committee and in the UN flagship program for the World Summit Awards for digital media. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. So now we're going to have Denise Williams. Denise.
Hi, good morning. Denise Williams. I'm from Cowichan Tribes on Vancouver Island. I've lived in Vancouver for the last couple of decades. I've been working in education and technology and the right for Indigenous people to be self-determining and sovereign, and doing that by ensuring that all Indigenous people have affordable, equitable access to internet and mobile technologies. I've been building education programs for about the last 15 years, most notably in K-12, and now a new program called Foundations and Futures in Innovation and Technology that we're hosting around British Columbia that connects Indigenous people with opportunities in the tech and innovation sector that's quickly expanding across British Columbia. That's what I spend most of my time during the day doing as the CEO of the First Nations Technology Council. And aside from that, I volunteer with a number of organizations, including as the president of the Urban Native Youth Association, with the Vancouver Economic Commission, on the Board of Governors of Simon Fraser University, and have been really honored to be supporting the Governor General of Canada on the innovation agenda, and as a member of the Indigenous Women's Roundtable with Women Service. They just changed their name. But I'm going to forget it.
Well, welcome, Denise. Let's give Denise a hand. Winnie.
Hi, my name is Winnie Shi. I am currently the co-president and CFO of InTransit BC, which probably doesn't mean a lot to you. We are the private sector company that has a 35-year design, build, finance, operate and maintain contract for the Canada Line that runs to the airport in Richmond from downtown. Prior to assuming this role, so I've only been in this role for about almost 18 months now, I was a partner at KPMG and their infrastructure advisory practice, where by and large, my clients are mostly public sector and working with municipalities, the provincial government and the federal government, looking at ways to implement infrastructure like the Canada Line, like the Sea to Sky Highway, like the hospitals and healthcare systems, and looking potentially at public-private partnerships, but other models that really look for collaboration between private sector and public sector. So I was there for 20 years outside of work, so my background has been very, very corporate. But outside of that, I'm also one of the founding members of the BC Women's Infrastructure Network, which started in 2011. Huge interest locally, nationally, and now globally. And we're actually hosting an event, one of the satellite sessions here on Friday evening, for those of you who are interested in attending, where we talk about gender issues associated in the infrastructure industry.
Thank you, Winnie. Let's give Winnie a big hand. And we have Ravi, Bansal, Beech.
Hi, my name is Ravi, Bansal, Beech. I'm born and raised in Burnaby, BC, and I'm actually a product of really good public policy. As soon as I learned to walk and talk, I also learned to reduce, reuse, and recycle. That actually led to the creation of Valley Acrylic. I have a bathtub manufacturing company in Mission, BC, which is 100% owned by females. It is zero waste, and we make bathtubs that save water and energy, which is an oxymoron in itself. But when you grow up with Mr. Dress Up and David Suzuki, you know to take garbage and turn it into art. And that actually led me, the plumbing industry is not very female focused, but I was able to sit on the board of Canadian Institute of Plumbing and Heating, started the Women's Network to encourage more women in the plumbing industry, and also I sit on the board for Women Entrepreneur Business in Canada, so all of the entrepreneur women in Canada to encourage more entrepreneur women. And I went to Simon Fraser University, like Denise, I'm an alum from there, and Duke, focusing on international business and business relations. So I'm really excited to see you guys all.
Thank you, Ravi. So what I know now that I wish I had known then. First of all, I want to apologize to all the young women in the room, because what I know now is that as a woman and a mother of 4, and one that had to go back to work when her babies were 3 months old, I never talked about how hard it was, because we were in an era of being superwomen. Do you remember that? We could do it all. We could have it all. That's what we thought. And so we weren't vulnerable. We were vulnerable. We didn't talk about how vulnerable we are. We had this idea that we could have everything, we could do everything, and we tried to make it look easy. And I think we did a disservice for our younger generation coming up behind us, because it was hard. I can remember in a bathroom at the university, pumping breast milk, crying, leaving my 3-month-old baby home and thinking, I can't do this. I remember putting my breast milk in the fridge and being told that having breast milk in the staff fridge made the men uncomfortable, so I wasn't allowed to do that. So I put it in a mason jar while I tried to figure it out, because your thinking process is all messed up, and walked in and watched one of my colleagues put it in his car. And all I had to do was get a little cooler and put it in my office so I could pump my breast milk, put it there. But it was tough. It was hard. And we never talked about it. So now we have a generation that thinks that it's easier than their experience, and that's unfair. So that's one of the things I wish I knew then that I know now. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists, beginning with Ravi, to talk about what I know now that I wish I had known then. Ravi.
First of all, I'm going to say thank you, because I'm a new mom and my baby's turning 6 months tomorrow. So I have my pumping kit in my car.
Probably better technology, because when
Much
we
better.
pumped, it friggin' hurt, right?
It's Medela, so it's good. You know what? My grandma always used to tell me, and I remember this and I forgot it, and I'm now remembering it again. My grandma always used to say to me, don't get mad. Why are you getting angry? You're burning your own blood. You're not really hurting the person you're mad at. You're not hurting the situation you're mad at. You're hurting yourself. You're burning your own blood. Why are you doing that? Don't get mad. Take action. Go change. Go make a change. Whatever you want to do. And I remember being a kid, I always knew that, and I would always be, doing my projects. I was always like the nerdy kid that was like the peer mediator and this, and always involved. And I remember after undergrad, I came out of school, I was super positive, I was super naive. I grew up in Burnaby, nothing wrong ever happened, and I started seeing the world as it is, and I wasn't very happy with the world as it is. I was really protected, and I was really lucky. I'm really grateful for the life I had and how I grew up and my childhood. And I didn't get angry, and I was just like, oh, why are women treated like this? And being in the plumbing industry, when you get to feel 3 different isms. There's ageism, there's sexism, 100%, and there is racism. Because I belong to an industry that is very much predominantly old white male, which is nothing wrong with old white males, right? But there wasn't really room or seriousness to what a young South Asian female had to say about plumbing. And they were really interested in making plumbing environmentally friendly, even though our industry wastes so much. 60% of landfill waste comes from the construction industry. That's my industry. You know how embarrassing that is for me? The reduce, reuse, recycle girl. You know? And think about how much water we waste, right? When you're trying to take a shower, or even when you were taking a bath. So when I wanted to be like, no, we're wasting so much, we can do better. Why aren't we doing better? You know? For a little while, I did get angry. I was just like, this is not good. Like, you know, why are people like this? Why aren't they changing? And then finally, I snapped out of it, which has really helped the trajectory of my life, which I'm always constantly working on. I have a 6-month-old. I don't sleep very much. I have to be like, be positive. But it really made me think, hey, why am I getting angry? It didn't hurt them for treating me less of a person. I was hurting myself. I'm burning my own blood. I had to change my mindset. I'm like, no, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to go work with universities. I'm going to go work with engineers. We are going to make a way to do things better. And we're going to manufacture responsibly. And we are going to make money doing it. And that's what really helped me. And I lost my way, and I'm really happy I kind of found it. And it was my grandmother. At the end of the day, I still took, words from the wise, right? I just forgot. And I'm really happy I'm remembering all that again. And I'm still, if I get negative, please let me know. What my grandma said, because I'm only burning my own blood.
Thank you, Ravi. Winnie.
Thank you. When I graduated from University of Waterloo, I certainly graduated with what I thought was reasonable technical competence. I had absolutely no idea how ill-prepared I was for the workplace. There was a whole host of soft skills that was never taught to me in university. And so I could go on and on about it, but I've chosen to talk about two things. One is self-advocacy and how important it is for women to advocate for themselves in their career. But it's getting recognition for what it is that you actually did. And it's not so much pointing out every single little thing you did, but it's going in things like, I would like to have feedback about my performance. I just did this report. I've, worked my butt off over the last 2 weeks about it. Let's talk about it. I think I did well here. What do you think about this? And opening that conversation so people realize what were your contributions? What did you do? The other thing is really looking for opportunities. If there's a new project going on that you want to be involved with, get in front of that person and say, hey, how can I be involved? I want to learn more about this area. I want to learn more about this project. This is where I can add value. But it is really important that you actually do deliver on what you say. Now, you do have to be a little bit careful. I've had quite a long career at KPMG, and and for the most part, young women are very bashful about advocating for themselves. Occasionally, you run across certain individuals who are very good at advocating for themselves, but they can't deliver it, and it really does negatively impact your credibility. So you really have to have a fine balance. But absolutely, for the most part, women are bashful about advocating for themselves, and they really should. The other thing that I found, and I had a very corporate career, is you really have to look for project champions. You have to look for somebody who will champion you. It's not just one person. It could be several people. It could be your boss. It could be your peer. It could be those that report to you. But you have to find people who are willing to speak up to you. So when I was a partner at KPMG, there was 18 partners in our group across the country, and we had over 120 people. And we had a very challenging performance measurement system where we did all the performance evaluations, all the bonuses, all the promotions on a national basis. So all 18 partners would sit on the phone in a conference call and talk about every single one of the 120 employees in our group. It was a very long, very painful call. And HR had come back and said, you know what, only the top 10% are outstanding. Another 25% were good, and then another 20%, is average, and then the bottom 10, 15% needs improvement, and everybody had to fit into that. Well, if you didn't have people who would speak up on your behalf, you would automatically go down and lower down in the category because we had to hit those quotas. So it's absolutely important, and it's not one champion for when you start the career, but throughout your career, actively look for people who will speak on your behalf. And it involves a lot of work. It involves, cultivating those relationships, making sure that your contributions are known.
Thank you, Winnie. Great. Denise?
Sure, thanks. I also had and still have a lot of naive optimism, and I hope that never goes away. I think it's one of the things that when I was younger in my career, in my early 20s, I was told quite a bit that I needed to stop with the Pollyanna attitude, that naive optimism, I needed to grow up and get real. I also had lots of really good tidbits of really bad advice from women more mature in their careers that included cutting my hair, wearing glasses, stop wearing lipstick, don't wear those outfits, have shorter high heels, don't distract men with what you look like, all this kind of stuff, and it really made me feel insecure. It made me feel like all the things that made me who I am, my femininity, my identity. I am an Indigenous woman. I was 20 at the time and full of energy and wore a lot of coconut butter and had a big laugh and that's and I'm not sorry. I wish at the time I didn't let that rattle me as much as it did, because I really felt like, when am I going to grow up and stop sort of alienating everybody? Stop sort of making people feel that they need to pull me aside and kind of help me grow up, whatever that means. So I think what happened for me, and I wish I could kind of go back and tell myself this, was that all of those aspects of my identity, being Indigenous, being young, being a woman, a very feminine woman with the kind of personality I have, those were all my value propositions. Those were going to go on to be all the things that would help me to come out of government or the other organizations I was working with, to have my own vision and to be resilient enough to stand in my power to see that vision through to what it is today. And I think if I would have kind of sanded all those edges and tried to fit in and tried to be like everyone else, I don't think that would have happened. And so I think it was really terrible advice, and whenever I run into the people that told me that, I like to remind them.
And Denise, that advice happens to us older women too, by the way,
Yeah.
by others, like cut your hair. I remember talking to some grade 4 kids, and I was introduced as a university president, and one of them made that scoff noise. I go, what do you mean? What's that noise? And he said, you're not the university president. And I said, why not? And he said, well, you don't look like a university president. So I said, well, what does a university president look like? They're taller. They have short hair. They're a man. They wear glasses. And they don't smile like very much. So that image of a leader that we have is still, and this is grade 4, children today. This was not a couple of months ago. So this is image of leadership, right here. Chaplain.
What I know now is the world doesn't move as fast as we think it does. So it's up to us to act up. So in the 60s, we thought that robots were going to soon take on our household labor. In the 70s, we thought pay equity was right around the corner. In the 80s, we thought the dedicated role of the personal computer was to come into our kitchen and help women, of course women, achieve work-life balance. I could go on, but you get the idea, and we're all still waiting. So most people know the career advice, follow your passion, but I really wish that I had learned or figured out early to find your activism, and then combine that with my own sense of urgency. And I'll tell you why. 35 years ago this spring, I was defending my undergraduate physics thesis on climate change, and 35 years ago, we had time to act. A lot has changed since then, but not enough. Today we share this sense of emergency, but it may or may not pull us back from the brink. And it may be too little too late. So 35 years ago, we already knew that the human impact on climate would be catastrophic if left unchecked. We already knew that fossil fuels were a disaster and rising sea levels were occurring. But if only I had known then what I know now was that it's really vital to combine my activism with my work and to act really quickly. So at the time, I was really fascinated by the science, and I think I took it for granted that the climate evidence was so strong and so compelling and so vital that, of course, everyone would just snap into action. Like as soon as you read what I read, boom, we'd be making these changes. And I thought it would just be a few years before the world had carbon emissions and we all lived lightly on the earth. So my enthusiasm was matched only by my delusion. You know, if I knew then what I know now, I would have branched out beyond the scientists around me. I would have found fresh allies who are also keen to battle climate change. I know now how critical it is to make sure that things happen fast and to not assume that those things will happen without me. So the organization that I lead today, the Vancouver Economic Commission, is the economic development agency for the city of Vancouver. And as you may know, the intention of economic development is to improve the economic, the social, and the political livelihood of the local community and to tie us into a global community. Really to do this hard work of transforming business as usual to what we think of as business with purpose. So that's really combining work with advocacy. And I think it's up to us, all of us in this room, to set that pace. Because against this background of catastrophic climate change, economic development can either lead in this transition or can be complacent. And one thing that I really want to share with you is that we're part of a progressive community. It includes poets and planners, it includes philosophers, work in education to build healthy, resilient communities, and people who combine this expertise with this agency, right? So you have to marry those two things up. And I would say that I've learned that the world needs more gadflies, and some of you may know that as a polite word for shit disturbers. You know, if only I had really understood how important it was to combine this activism with my career right off the bat, I would have, I think, been more outspoken, and maybe things would be just a little bit better. So much later in life, some of us have talked about our kids. I became the mom of a child activist. This makes me proud, but it's also challenging, and it can also be embarrassing. I remember one time our son, whose childhood cause was children's rights, asked me to come right down the street and help him set up for a community event on East Hastings. He was about 14. I agreed, and when I got there, the welcome poster announced the theme of the evening: how to cope with your controlling parents. So some say we learn from experience, but I learned much more from young people like my son, but also people like Greta Thunberg, who launched the Global School Strike for Climate, people like Emma Gonzalez, who survived a school shooting and went on to become a gun control hero. These are the teenagers, these are the prophets, and these are the people who build advocacy into their daily lives. And these are the people I'm really excited about. So if we bring up our kids into a world, advocacy in all they do, if we weave activism and this sense of urgency into the curriculum, then we'll find ourselves in a better place. But we don't have a lot of time. As Greta just said in the book she published, I want you to act as if your house is on fire, because it is.
Thank you. Now, very profound from all of our four speakers. So what I'm going to do, normally in a panel, you ask a question and everyone has a chance to answer. I'm not doing that. I'm going to ask each panelist different questions, and they don't have them. So it will be spontaneous. And then at about 1:45, so I'll do that for 15 minutes, we'll open the floor to you. How does that sound?
Great.
Okay. So this is a question that Winnie herself suggested. Have you experienced a glass ceiling in your career, Winnie? And how did you notice it, and what did you do about it?
I would actually say that early part of my career, I didn't notice the glass ceiling. I mean, certainly people talked about it, you know, and maybe I didn't look far enough ahead. But certainly, you know, I did very well at KPMG. I certainly rose through the ranks quite quickly. I became a senior manager when I was 28 years old. It was all great. And then everything changed. And this is where I started noticing that there was in fact a glass ceiling, that I started to look around, and the next step, logical step, would have been partner. And there weren't that many female partners around. And in fact, you know, I compared myself to a male counterpart who basically started at senior manager the same time as me. He made partner at least 3 or 4 years earlier than me. And so that's when you started really noticing that there was a glass ceiling. Now, I eventually did get to partner, but it was a tough slog. And it was learning a lot of skills and putting my feet to the fire of really advocating for myself, really finding champions, and being that much more vocal and putting in that much more effort than a male counterpart did. You know, my hope is that there's more women in leadership so that they can help pave the way for the younger generation.
It's great comments, and it's true when you look at this career path of so many. Catherine, you mentioned you have a son. I think you have 2 children. We hear all the time for women, not so much, we don't hear this so much for men, but that women, it's important to have a work-life balance. What does that mean, and is it possible?
Okay, yes, you can have it all if your husband is a stay-at-home dad. I'm very fortunate that my husband went that route, and so I have to credit and acknowledge him for what he's done at home, which has allowed me to really throw myself into work and the things that I enjoy, growing teams, the travel associated with the job, and you know, the other backup that we need as executives in order to accomplish our goals. In terms of really having it all, I think you can have it all at any one time, but probably not over the course of a quarter or a semester or a year. So, you know, when you involve the people in your life in a discussion about balance, you know, maybe that time horizon also needs to be discussed so that everyone's on board.
It is tough. This is one of the things we need to talk about, right? It is tough to have work-life balance. I had my youngest daughter on a job interview. I was living in Calgary and flew to Nova Scotia for a job interview, 8.5 months pregnant. Doctor said I was tight as a drum. I was going to be fine. 7 hours interviews on Thursday. Arrived on Thursday, 7 hours interview on Friday, had a baby on Saturday. Didn't tell anyone about the interview because I didn't want people to know about it, so I'm all by myself, having a baby alone in the hospital. Did that. When she turned 5, I was going to be around for her birthday, and Taylor was crying in the backseat of the car. She said, "Mom, you're away at all the important events in my life. You were even away when I was born." So it is tough to have work-life balance as a woman. Denise, no, I'm going to go to Ravi now. Ravi, what do you believe are the qualities of strong leaders?
You know what? I'm not going to say, oh yeah, these are the bullet points, because that's what hurt me. Because I thought I had to be a bullet point for so long. And then you look at social media and you're like, oh, but that girl doesn't have puke on her hair and she has a kid. And so-and-so, you know, is in a private jet. Why am I not in a private jet right now? No, I think that you need to figure out what makes you happy and you're able to look at yourself in the mirror and what gives you, like, you know how people like find your passion? Yeah, find your passion, find your advocacy, find whatever makes you happy, but don't be a bullet point, because you're never going to be happy then. Because once you achieve that bullet point, you're going to be like on to the next one. And you can't be happy. You need to be, like, now I'm kind of changing. It might be motherhood, it might be the hormones talking right now, But now I'm kind of looking at myself, I'm like, okay, I have so much time in a day. I have so much energy in a day. And I do want to have it all, but I want to be happy at the end of the day. So I have my business and I owe it to my employees, I owe it to my customers, I owe it to my vision to make sure the business is doing well. I have a daughter who I love more than any essential organ in my body. So I need to do things because I'm looking at what's going on in the world right now, and I need to make sure I'm strong and healthy enough so she has a better world than what's happening right now. Because I'm not happy about it. I'm not angry. I'm gonna vote. I'm gonna take action. And the third thing is, I love my marriage and I love my family. So I need to make sure I'm happy there too. So what makes a good leader? You don't have to be a CEO. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You guys are all great leaders. Be happy. Be a good member of your society, whatever that is, right? Believe whatever you want, as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else. You know? As long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. But be happy. Like, you know, I don't want to be a bullet point anymore. I was like that for a long time. Like, oh, I have to do this. I have to hit this number. I have to hit that target. And it is what you were saying before. There was this expectation of superwoman. But what is superwoman to her or her? Why does it have to be superwoman to me? I'm superwoman when I look at myself in the mirror and I'm happy with myself. And you guys are all super. Even the men. You're all good. And I'm kind of, I guess I'm done with it. I'm completely done with making myself a bullet point. So I really hope you don't make yourself a bullet point. Just do you. As
Denise, what's your next step or stage in your leadership journey? What are you looking forward to?
It's hard to say. I mean, next step in the leadership journey. Well, you know, it's really. When we were speaking outside, I was really trying to, share that it's been the greatest gift of my life to be able to be the CEO of the First Nations Technology Council, because for a time it was just myself and one other woman in my living room trying to figure out if we could make it work. And the fact that we have 23 employees and most of them are young Indigenous women under 30, and we're raising a lot of awareness, and people are starting to understand how important equality of internet and mobile connectivity is in this province and across the country, not just for Indigenous people, but for all people as a country. That is the most rewarding thing that has ever happened to me. And I think that having so much young energy around me, I really agree with what Catherine said about, like, these are our prophecies. Rising up those voices to have the skills and the strength and the resilience to take the torch, it has made me realize I'm part of a relay race, and this is just my part of it. And I'm super honored that I've been able to take it this far. But, I don't know, it is really something, I agree with what you're saying. You don't need to be a CEO to be in a leadership role. I mean, I think what I knew before that I still know now is that everything is about community. It's about your relationships with people, with yourself, with the planet. And I think getting square with that on a daily basis, I'm very, very much about rituals. So I like to wake up in the morning and do the things that are going to connect me to land base, to the people around me, so that I can go out in the world and do things, as we say, in a good way. Because at the end of the day, it's not really what you do, it's how you do it, it's how you make people feel. Right? That always has really resonated with me. So I think, it's not super important to me to be the CEO of a company. If I'm honest, I don't think I wanted to be the CEO of a company, and every day I kind of wonder if I want to be the CEO of a company, and that would make, I'm sure, my board and all my employees really nervous. But, I think what it's about is contribution. And the reason I'm not sure how to answer that is because I don't really know what my own potential is. I don't really know what the ultimate contribution I'll be able to make is, but I feel like as long as you're bold and truthful and passionate, the universe hears it. So I'm just trying to be as authentic as possible. So we'll see how goes.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Ravi, we have heroes. Each of us have people we look up to. Can you name one person or a person that has really inspired you that you look up to?
You know, I have so many heroes, men and women. And I guess just recently I've gone inwards and with what's happening, I really believe my grandmother, just because she raised me, and my mother is amazing, they really set me in a trajectory which I'm so grateful for. And I know I'm lucky. I know I'm really lucky because I've heard from other people who may not have had the upbringing that I got so lucky to have. Because my grandmother was just pure love. And she used to she was born in India. She got married at 13, She didn't have kids until she was 40, which is unheard of back then, right? She had a hard life, but she came to Canada, she raised her kids, and she was so full of love. Never, ever did any of us kids from any of her children ever feel like we were loved less than the other kids. Because you hear about that. You hear about these stories about oh, my grandmother preferred our uncle's kids or anything like that. No, we were completely loved equally. And furthermore, she used to say she always used to say to me, listen, Ravi, everyone has red blood. It's actually kind of greenish blue, but then when it gets oxidized, it looks red. This is the thing that I learned as a kid from a lady who was born in a village in India, never went to school, got married at 13, and she was just so loving. And I think that really helped me grow up because, things are hard when you're growing up and you're, immigrant family and things like that. But you get really lucky, you're born in Canada, so you win the lottery. And then you have these teachings where you really see everyone as equal. And I really think for me, that was a hero because I got that lesson in life. And now I have my daughter who is biracial, right? And I don't see her as biracial, other people do. I just see her as my little baby with blue-green blood that oxidizes and then looks red.
Thank you, Ravi. Denise, can you name a role model that has provided you with advice and what that advice was?
Well, like I said, I've got lots of bad advice, which is also good advice. Later, depends how you want to hear it. I've had some really good advice, and I've really tried to be mindful that teaching and wisdom comes from a lot of different unexpected places. And so I think sometimes we place a lot of emphasis on mentors and sponsors, people who have walked a path that you're trying to be on too, and they're going to help to guide you through it. And I think that's right, and probably really right in a lot of parts of our economy and different sectors. It depends on if you're in the corporate world or where you are. I also think listening really intently to people who have really different experiences and are different ages, different backgrounds, and learning how to open up a conversation with somebody and really be in that conversation. Some of the best, and it wasn't advice, it was people sharing stories with me that helped me have a different perspective and to think about things differently. I mean, really, I think that the most powerful thing that we can do in the world is to listen to all those stories and perspectives and then try to figure out how to contextualize your contribution once you have received those stories. They're a gift for people to share with you, what they've gone through. And so I think the best advice has come to me not in under the guise of being advice, but I've been gently guided by a lot of elders around British Columbia I've really been supported by a lot of young people. They've really helped me to listen in a different way and to understand in a different way. And you know, I'm just a big believer that you know, leadership is one of the most difficult and personal and vulnerable experiences. And I think it feels like that if you're doing it right. And I think part of the reason is because you've got to take in all of these different perspectives and stories, and then you've got to make decisions. And that's a really hard thing to do.
Thank you, well said. Catherine, conscious bias happens all the time. We see it, particular against women and race and LGBTQ plus, we see it all over the place. But unconscious bias is more insidious and often unseen. How do you know when you experience unconscious bias? And how do you have a strategy or an example of how you've dealt with it?
I mean, I think both kinds of bias are insidious, and how I deal with those personally, I'm kind of getting back in touch with my feminist roots, really looking trouble in the face, being willing to acknowledge to myself when I'm experiencing or the target of bias. When something's confusing and may constitute unconscious bias, taking it to good friends, a board of advisors, kind of walking through that, getting other people to help me acknowledge that it may be that I'm facing unconscious bias. You know, I think addressing bias publicly in the workplace, making sure people are in touch with ways of overcoming their own bias, whether it's conscious or unconscious, making that part of the leadership dialogue at work is incredibly important, something that needs refreshing every couple of years. You can't rest on your laurels. These things are deeply buried inside us. We always have to challenge us. Am I acting in some way with bias? And so it's also helpful to me to look at both sides of the equation as a leader, and to make sure that people see that there is a path to break through this bias, and that we don't have to invent this path. There are outstanding communities and cultures and workshops and resources for us to tap, and we don't have to figure that all out ourselves.
Thank you, Catherine. Winnie, you're going to get the last question from me. So what would you hope people will take away from our panel today? What do you hope they will think about as they walk out the door of the escalator?
Well, I hope that everybody walks out of here knowing that who they are right now should be celebrated, that they shouldn't try to change or fit themselves into a square in order to succeed, to lead with passion, to know that, yes, in order to address this gender inequality, in order to fight against it, yes, you do need to work hard against it, but it's worth it. It's for the next generation, so that in the next generation, that my daughters, when they're sitting in my position, that they don't know anything about a glass ceiling other than in history books. So that's what I hope.
That's great. So we have 50. We have 10 minutes for you to ask questions of our panel. Please direct it to one of our panelists and be concise and introduce yourself first. So we have someone in the back, hand up. Stand up, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Josh Nathanson. The question that I have, and I don't have it for a specific person, but maybe the person with whom it maybe resonates, is that bar none, the nastiest, most vindictive and difficult managers I've ever had have been women. And some, not all of my best mentors have been men. And what my own observation is that men aren't threatened by me, and therefore they're more willing to help. but that among women, particularly older women, there's often an attitude of scarcity. That I made it here, there's room for, one woman, and by golly, I'm going to keep this spot. And I would like to both see whether that resonates with anyone else, but also just a general call to be conscious of that. Please don't, to the world in general, to think about that and don't do that.
I met this woman.
Anybody want to deal with that? Ravi?
I agree with you. I've experienced it, but here's the thing. We're gonna have to change, right? So I've experienced that, and then I vowed that I'm not gonna be like that. So therefore, I have so many amazing female mentors, right? Thank goodness for them. Therefore, I am making myself available to be a mentor to other females as well. In my team, we're not sexist, we have men and women, we're just owned by females. We have men and women in our team, and I make sure that we have men and women in our team. We started the plumbing network for women because I wanted women to feel comfortable in the plumbing industry. So it doesn't exist? Yes, it does, right? You gotta look at inside yourself. It is competitive, think about it, you go on mat leave. You are basically opening up your role to somebody else, right? You come back, it's human nature. People get defensive. But at the same time, we have to look into ourselves. You're gonna have to look into yourself so when you are the manager of that next generation, you don't do it. And I had to do that because I've had that happen to me. I've had managers in law firms and this, a huge history of myself I haven't talked about, where I saw it happen, I didn't understand why it was happening to me. Like, why are they being mean? But I realized it's human nature. Someone's trying to protect their role. Because we created this really gross thing in society called quotas, that we can only have certain women in roles of leadership, which is ridiculous. We don't have to believe that. So we're gonna make that change. We're gonna be like, I'm not gonna treat someone like that. I'm not gonna treat another human like that, male or female. And that's gonna be on us. And that's how we're gonna move.
Can I make one short comment on this? Sorry. Because I just want to say thank you for saying that. I think that it's a really courageous thing to say because we all want to believe that women lift up women. And I experienced that personally. It almost stopped my career because the woman in a high authority position really took a dislike to me and really made it clear that I was going to be uncomfortable every day in that office. And I felt the same way. I didn't understand why. I didn't have any power in that, and it literally almost stopped me from wanting to do the work that I have been doing. And one of the things, she still doesn't like me to this day, but I think one of the things that I wanted to do before I left that organization was to sit in front of her and tell her what happened and how it made me feel and why I felt like it was unfair. And that's why we still have a bit of an issue today. But I needed to be heard, and I just want to say if anyone is feeling that, because I feel your general call to action on this, and I think it's absolutely exactly right. And we have to take those moments, seize those moments to speak our truth, even if you have to walk away and it's going to cause some discomfort. And and then I think the next thing is to show absolute love and courage to that person every time you see them. And I think that that's the only thing we can really do. And I hope I hear this from a lot of young women that I work with right now. And so I just thank you for raising it because it was a very real issue and it's very exciting.
Okay, we have someone here and then we'll come here.
Okay, so I think for Winnie and, I take it away that you say look for workplace champions to support you, get some feedback on how you're doing and can do better, so opportunity comes to you. Abandon implicit biases about how you're supposed to look and present yourself and sound. As leaders, how do you feel you can champion to reduce workplace sexism that targets women and decreases their opportunities just because somebody in the job might have an issue with them personally with jealousy or has made sexual advances? Because I personally think that that's where the problem starts. And then women who have to ignore that to move ahead generate some kind of, sort of ammunition towards other women. If we can somehow stop that in its tracks, it will open up the opportunity for women. We won't be caught in this competitive situation, and maybe we will champion each other a bit more. How, as leaders, do you feel you can make a change on women's safety and respect in the workplace?
So I'm going to ask Winnie to answer that, and then I'm going to go to the last question here, just because I'm watching the time carefully, and I know it's many of you at your lunch hour. Winnie, concise response?
I think it's opening that conversation. And it's not just opening the conversation amongst women groups, but it's opening that conversation with men. So my BC Women's Infrastructure Network, we've been talking about all the issues associated with gender bias, the barriers that we face. We're realizing that the next step is having that conversation with our men counterparts and having them acknowledge that that's a problem and making them part of that solution. So that's our next big thing, and making sure that everybody aware that these issues happen consciously or unconsciously, and consciously doing something about them.
I would just like to add to that, I think we have to stop body shaming women at work. We have to eliminate regressive dress codes. We have to stop being obsessed about how women appear. We have to start listening to what they say, listening to their performance, evaluating their deliverables, and depending on your workplace, one of the first things you might do is look at dismantling an unfair dress code.
Thank you. Last question. I'm sorry, just the time.
My question is to you.
Me?
You talked about your daughter said, you have never been here. And so, how do you respond to that?
Well, she was right. At the time, she was 5. It was when I was starting my career. I was one of the youngest deans, period, of education in Canada, and it was, I miss things. I tried to make them up to her. I tried to do all kinds of things to make, but I remember my kids saying, why can't you be a normal soccer mom? And I said to them, well, what's a normal soccer mom? Well, the mom's not marking papers while they're sitting watching us play, right? Like, they told me. So I had to change some things. I never took work home after that. I had to stay at work till 7 at night. When I got home, they were, whether it was 9 at night or 7, they got all my attention. So my kids now, I ask them now, the young adults, and they say, we had a fabulous life because when you were there, you were so there. And I've learned, if they call, I take their calls no matter where I am or what I'm doing. So my mother once told me if I was going to be a working mom, as she was, to work without guilt. Well, that's an easy thing to say, but I tried really hard to listen to my children, and if I could make changes, and I would have conversations with them. Well, let me tell you why I'm working. Let me tell you what I did. Let me tell you what I taught. Let me tell you what I did today, and trying to get them to understand the world I lived in and the career. And sometimes I did well, and sometimes I'm shitty. Now I'm going to end on one thing, because the comment was about who supports who. So I just want to say something to everyone here. You know, how many of you have heard women are women's worst enemies? How many of you, put your hands up if you've heard that, or women don't support women? How many of you heard that? How many of you have heard men don't support men? No? So unpack that. Take a look at that. There are bad managers who are women, and there are bad managers who are men, right? But women support women, and women don't support women. Men support women, and men don't support women. Men support men, and men don't support men. So it all happens, but we need to be careful and listen carefully to our language, because the mantra, women don't support women, I hear in almost every women in leadership conference I'm part of. And I never have heard men don't support men. So think about what we're saying about women. And I say now when I hear it, bullshit. I say women do support women. There are incidents when it doesn't happen, yes. But it's not a global thing, and we need to make sure we lift each other up. And the only way we lift each other up is if we call out things that bring us down. Right? So I want to end that saying we have had a fabulous panel. A panel of women who have been authentic, who have been genuine, and who have been so generous to share their time with us. So much for all of us to learn, no matter where we are. Passion. We should be passionate about women's leadership. The fact that we are women in positions of privilege means that we need to use our voice to make sure we can speak for people who don't have positions of privilege. And there are struggles of our grandmothers, struggles of our mothers we need to honor, and we need to make sure that my little granddaughter, Kiera, is not sitting in this audience listening to a panel on women leadership. Because it's time. It's time, as Catherine said, we're running out of time. Right now it says if our pay equity, it will take more than 200 years to reach gender parity and pay equity at the pace we're going. As this panel said, we have fabulous leaders, time to move the agenda up. Let's remember that leadership is about being who you are and owning that. Thank you so much. Thank you, panel. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Winnie. Thank you, Denise. And thank you, Catherine. Well done. Thank you to you for giving us the greatest gift you can give, your time. And I hope we respected it as well as we could. Thank you so much to you. Thank you.